Welcome back to Burn to Notice, the series dedicated to analyzing Michael Weston and his crew. If you are new to the series, there is a link in the description to catch you up. This episode begins with a recap of the past half season from when Mike got blown up until now, but they cleverly weave this into a story to Carla, omitting what was learned last episode. That is, in fact, that Victor is the guy they're chasing in order for Mike to hold some of his cards. And this is how Mike is going to try to leverage for Carla's men to back off, as to not scare the person who is trying to kill him. However, she needs a little bit of proof he is telling the truth before acquiescing to Mike's demands, but also this means he has to lock down for a bit. So Maddie is forced to stay at the loft. I do find it funny.
You had to send Sam? No offense.
None taken.
Then after some small talk, it sounds like Mike has some company, and kudos to the writers, everyone draws their weapons, including Maddie, who grabs a steak knife. And the tension is released when Mike calls for Sam.
Yeah, Mike.
He was talking to me. Who are you? I'm Samantha.
And that's when it's revealed they were going to get married, shocking everyone in the room, especially to Fee, who is, understandably, taking it the hardest. In the meantime, Mike is talking with new Sam, old Sam. I'm just going to call her new Sam. He briefs her a tad while he locks back down. But of course, she has a job to be done. So they meet at a bar to debrief and get eyes on Brennan, an ex-spy who is using his knowledge to gain wealth. Another dark mirror of Mike, if he was a little bit more concerned with money than helping people, making him
Evil son of a bitch.
Then Sam reveals she has stolen a military chip for drones because her kid got kidnapped by Brennan. So she sweet talks Mike and implies that the boy is actually Mike's child. So they take a look at the site of the deal and deduce they are working against an expert, which Mike formulates a plan to hit him after the trade, using Sam as backup and Fee as a lookout, with him being the last resort. And this is a great plan. After they do the scouting, Mike talks with Fee about Samantha, and Fee is not really in the mind to hear it right now.
It wasn't the right time when we met. It wasn't the right time when we started dating. And it wasn't the right time when I moved to Miami. No, it was the right time to tell me when she showed up on your front step.
This is when old Sam meets with Mike at the Carlito with a bit of intel about Victor, and Sam confirms what we already know, which is that Victor is a lot like Mike, just a lot more ruthless. It is interesting they are chasing two ex-spies that are different but similar in the way that they are just as smart as Mike, but way more dangerous. As Mike returns to the loft, Maddie is waiting up for him, and of course, Mike misunderstands Maddie's fury, but quickly covers it up by bringing up new Sam. And so Mike tells her the bare minimum until she brings up the kid, and even Mike isn't quite sure if he is or is not the father. However, this does track with Mike's motivations. Anytime there's a kid involved, it heightens him to an almost next level.
For two little boys who are being knocked around by their father, Michael would take on the Chinese army, honey.
This is when their conversation gets interrupted by Victor, who calls in order to hopefully meet at some time. The next day, Brennan arrives at the trade location, and it's interesting that when he says Sam, old Sam is the one that answers, showing just how confusing this situation is. But Brennan reels it back and becomes all business. New Sam gives up the chip to reveal Sam's kid with a cast on his arm. That's not good. Brennan added a bit of insurance by planting a bomb on an 8-year-old person. Man, that's evil. But this means they can't jump him, so unfortunately they have to let him go. And they need a new plan. After this blown deal, Mike debriefs with Sam, and they confirm officially that the kid is not Mike's. But this isn't time for celebrating because Mike has a very good point. The whole world is going to be looking for her as soon as the company realizes the chip is missing, meaning Mike needs to steal it back from Brennan.
How do you propose to do that?
Don't say propose.
Then at the loft, Fee and Sam are waiting outside due to Maddie smoking, and right on cue, Fee wants to go on an armed assault on Brennan, but Sam is able to actually talk her down. This is where Mike comes up with a plan that requires Fee to act jealous. They break into Brennan's house, and it doesn't work as expected, so Mike and Fee have to be themselves for a change. This gives Mike an opening to offer to help Brennan test the ship because he heard that new Sam messed with it. Unfortunately, Brennan doesn't think he needs the help and shoos them away. They debrief at the Carlitos with new Sam and Saved by the Bell. Carla's men show up for Mike to take him to a meeting.
I never actually thought I'd look forward to this. Excuse me.
Which cuts the tension. During the meeting, after Carla confirms he is telling the truth, she is a lot more relaxed and she agrees to stop following his every move. But she mentions management as the entity above her, which I believe is the first time she has ever mentioned. And honestly, I think Mike is too preoccupied to even pick up on the fact that now he has a bigger enemy to go toe-to-toe with. After the meeting, Brennan calls to get Mike's help, and when they arrive at his place, Brennan holds them at gunpoint and explains that when the chip is out in the open, he wants eyes on them, basically just to ensure that there's no funny business involved. When they arrive, Brennan brags about leaving the chip in the air 23 hours a day, and in that plane, considering this could be Brennan's plane, and he only needed to hire a pilot to do this, it would be so radically expensive, almost enough money to, I don't know, invest and live off of the interest instead of stealing and brokering a military chip. Plus, even if he was willing to do this, he would have more trust in the pilot than anyone else because he could just up and leave and sell the chip himself. He has to know what he has because Brennan literally takes it out of the bag in front of him. So he could have just left with it. Plus, the plane is so small, it would be like long haul trucking in a Prius, which would either mean multiple planes and multiple pilots costing so much money. It begs the question of why he is even doing this in the first place. However, he also might be lying, but this is also a terrible lie that still relies on the trustworthiness of this specific pilot. Anyway, the chip tests good according to Brennan's geek in a chair. That sounds familiar. And coincidentally, Victor shows up at the best time because Brennan is itching for a reason to end Mike, but they are able to point their attention to Victor, where a firefight ensues. Confirming Mike is against Sam, this just shows you how good Mike is at thinking on his feet. Luckily, Victor survives, otherwise the next episode would not work at all. However, this does convince Brennan to hire Mike in order to beef up security, and this is exactly what he needs. The next scene is them planning in the loft, and it is nice to see the butterfly painting in the background Mike got a couple episodes ago. But they decide to hide Sam and Sam when making the hangar safe, just like old times.
Like we did in Dublin.
Yeah.
She talked about that thing you and I did in St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
Thankfully, Victor calls and sets up a meet and talk about the firefight he just survived. Meanwhile, Maddie sneaks up on Sam to talk about everything and the fact that she proposed to him, making that earlier joke a lot more funny. Anyway, Mike and Fee secure the hangar by reinforcing stuff and placing cameras in places and adding guns. Then the two Sams wait until the next day to strike back. And when that happens, oh no, Brennan closes the hangar, forcing Sam and Sam's hand. So the plane lands with the same pilot. Yeah, that man made a small fortune just flying a plane in circles. when, after the buyers show up, all of a sudden, Sam begins firing, and Mike convinces Brennan to leave, but not before getting a good look at Samantha rolling by, effectively blowing the buy, forcing a no-win situation for Brennan. This is where Mike convinces him to get the chip back to the facility, but Brennan threatens him before that.
If you try to sell the chip, if you don't put it back, I will find you. And no clever story you're gonna tell is gonna stop me from blowing your brains out of the back of your skull. Do we understand each other?
Absolutely.
Which would have been pretty effective motivation, except for the fact that we know that he's working with Sam. So this is the whole point of the situation. Next, new Sam goes over the blueprints and all of the security they will have to deal with. Luckily, she is still hired on to the facility, with Mike being her +1. They hang around the break room in order to steal a can that has a handprint of someone with access. And how are we supposed to believe they got a flawless print on the first try, even with condensation on the can? And who honestly grabs a can only once with their whole hand? But this, however impossible, works. And they go to a dressing room where they disrobe to put on coveralls. Keyword coverall. This is just to increase the tension between the two. After this, they go through the facility, leaving charges, with the final one being the one to blow the door. It is interesting that even though Fee isn't there in reality, she is there in spirit, because this is very much a Fiona play. But they blow the facility and the doors almost simultaneously in order to put the chip back. Mike is smart enough to cover his tracks by fake stealing something to justify their presence. Now the changing room thing is even dumber because magically they are back in their street clothes mere minutes after the explosions, which doesn't make any sense. You can see in the background there are people who are still in their clean suits. So when exactly did they have time to change? Anyway, Mike is so in tune with Sam, he knows that she stole something, and Mike is able to call her out on this. But this does imply how close they were before this episode. Then Brennan calls Mike to ensure the job done. Now Sam leaves, and she is never seen or heard from again. That night, Mike returns to the loft and explains his relationship with Sam to Fee, and how Fee was the reason they split up because he loves Fee. Yeah, that's like some big news or something. Honestly, this whole series, they've been on again, off again, and they've been playing that will they, won't they, but at least they get together a lot faster than Jim and Pam from The Office. But it is frustrating, they always seem so close. The next morning, Mike modifies a camera to be a stun gun, which wakes up Maddie, and they talk briefly about the conversation last night until Mike leaves to meet with Victor. And that's why he had to disguise a camera as a stun gun. He needed to get past the metal detectors, which is just so smart. I can't even begin to give him the kudos he deserves for that. He meets Victor in the bathroom, and after some small talk, they fight. That ends with Mike stunning Victor and knocking him unconscious, with Mike ending this episode on a somewhat confusing note.
Will you lie to learn something important? Yes. Will you betray someone to serve a higher cause? Maybe. Will you trade another man's life for your freedom? You don't really know the answer until you face the question.
I mean, it's Mike. He's not really going to trade Victor for his freedom, right? But this sets up the finale perfectly. This episode is good, not great. The Samantha twist did surprise me the first time. The fact that Fee has all of this animosity towards Sam just shows how much she actually cares for Mike, but also just as much that Mike has feelings for Fee. Sam was kind of on the back burner. I think this is because really there isn't that many jokes that can be made about the two Sams, but he was able to reveal some background to Victor. All in all, can't wait for the finale where Mike takes the fight to Carla herself. Thanks for watching. If you're curious on how the FBI solves crimes using psychology, check out my other series, Inside Criminal Minds. Link in the description. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.